The arena shook with the roars of thousands of alien spectators. The Colosseum of Might, the largest combat arena in the galaxy, was hosting an event that would be remembered for centuries. On one side, towering warriors from the strongest species in the known universe. The four-armed Brackens, the stone-skinned Draldar, the hyperfast Zelvari, and the war-born Cresthans. On the other side, a single human. Lieutenant Jack Morrison stood alone, adjusting the cuffs of his standard-issue military uniform. Around him, warriors who could tear through steel, crush boulders with their bare hands, and move faster than the eye could follow sneered down at him. To the gathered crowd it was obvious. The human was about to die. And yet, Morrison simply smirked. The aliens had no idea what was coming. The purpose of the arena. The Galactic Confederation prided itself on order and strength. For centuries, conflicts between species were settled in the Colosseum rather than full-scale wars. Each species sent champions to prove their superiority, to showcase who deserved respect, who deserved fear. And in all that time humanity had never participated. They were a relatively young species, a curiosity at best, an afterthought at worst. But today that was going to change. Today humanity would show the galaxy what they were capable of. Or at least a fraction of it. The challenge begins. The announcer, a seven-eyed Zorgathian, raised its clawed arms. Let the trial of supremacy begin. A deafening gong echoed through the arena. The first warrior stepped forward, a Bracken juggernaut standing over 9 feet tall, each of his 4 arms bulging with muscle. His species was known for its unparalleled brute strength. They could rip through armored plating with their bare hands and crush a creature's skull in a single blow. He laughed, his deep voice booming across the arena. Human, I will make this quick. Morrison sighed. You really won't. The Bracken charged. The ground shook beneath his thunderous steps. He swung a colossal fist. And Morrison vanished. No, not vanished. He moved. Faster than the Bracken could comprehend. Before the alien even realized what had happened, Morrison was behind him, his fist buried into the Bracken's lower spine. A sickening crack rang out. The Bracken collapsed, twitching, paralyzed from the waist down. Morrison adjusted his wrist and muttered, "Next." The crowd went silent. The galaxy begins to question everything. The second warrior stepped forward, a Draldar stone-born, his rocky hide impervious to most weapons. You cannot break my body, human? Morrison grinned. Who said I need to? The Draldar swung a massive stone arm, enough to flatten a tank. Morrison sidestepped and grabbed the alien's wrist. Then, to the shock of every spectator, he lifted the 800-pound warrior off the ground and slammed him headfirst into the arena floor. The impact shattered the stone plating. The Draldar stopped moving. Alien stunned. This wasn't possible. The remaining warriors hesitated. The human wasn't just winning, he was playing with them. The next challenger, a Zelvari speed demon, moved so fast he was invisible to the naked eye, a blur of blue energy. He was upon Morrison in an instant, striking hundreds of times per second. Only to freeze as Morrison caught his final punch with 2 fingers. The Zelvari's eyes widened in horror. Morrison tilted his head. That was cute. My turn. A single punch, faster than a gunshot, slammed into the Zelvari's torso. The alien folded in half midair, spun uncontrollably and crashed into the far wall of the arena. Unconscious. What are you? The final warrior, a Crestan warlord, stepped back, his mandibles twitching with fear. His species was bred for combat. They were the apex predators of the galaxy. But right now, facing Morrison, he felt like prey. What are you? The warlord whispered. Morrison stretched his arms, rolling his shoulders lazily. A human. The warlord hesitated, then snarled. He lunged with a war spear, his species' signature weapon. Morrison didn't even move. The spear snapped against his skin like a twig. The warlord's eyes widened in terror. Morrison sighed. My turn. A single palm strike to the warlord's chest. And the alien flew across the arena, crashing into the stands. The warlord didn't get back up. Silence. Absolute, deafening silence. The revelation that broke the galaxy. The entire stadium was in shock. This wasn't possible. Humans weren't supposed to be this strong. One of the Confederation's highest-ranking officials, a towering Krovax, stood in disbelief. You are holding back. Morrison smirked. You finally figured it out. The galaxy had assumed humans were weak. They had assumed humanity was just another species, another minor power, another forgettable civilization. They had never considered the possibility that humans weren't weak, just pretending to be. And now they knew the truth. Humanity was holding back. And if this was Morrison playing nice, the galaxy was not ready for what they could truly do. The moment the realization hit, the galactic coliseum descended into chaos. Alien spectators shouted in disbelief. Some fled the stands as if fearing the lone human in the arena might suddenly turn on them. Others furiously debated among themselves, trying to rationalize what they had just witnessed. But there was no explanation. What Morrison had done should have been impossible. And yet he had done it effortlessly. In the private spectator booths, galactic leaders and military strategists watched in stunned silence. The High Commander of the Bracken Empire clenched his 4 fists. A fluke. That human is just an anomaly. A Zelvari admiral hissed. He reacted faster than one of my kind. That should not be possible. The Drelthar warlord, his rocky skin cracking in stress, grumbled, I've fought humans in skirmishes before. They were capable but not like this. And then, from the darkest corner of the booth, a Krovax intelligence officer whispered the words that sent chills through them all. What if they'd been hiding this all along? A cold silence settled over the room. Because that possibility? It was far more terrifying than anything else. Interrogation of the human. Minutes later, Morrison sat in a heavily secured military chamber, flanked by armed guards from half a dozen species. The tension in the room was palpable. Across from him, a council of high-ranking officials stared at him as if he were a ticking bomb. A Bracken general slammed his fist on the table. Explain yourself, human. Are you enhanced? Augmented? No natural being should possess that kind of power. Morrison laughed. Enhanced? No. This is just me. A Zorik strategist bared his fangs. Impossible. We have records of human physical capabilities. You're stronger, faster, and more durable than anything documented. What are you hiding? Morrison leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. Oh, come on. You really think I'm special? The officials exchanged uneasy glances. Aren't you? Morrison smirked. Not really. That answer shook them to their core. Because if he wasn't special, if this level of ability was normal for a human, that meant humanity was an entirely different kind of threat. The theory that changed everything. An older reptilian scholar, one of the Confederation's most renowned scientists, slowly stood up. His scales paled in realization. Evolution. Of course. The room turned toward him. The scientist trembled, staring at Morrison as if he were some ancient predator awakened from slumber. Humans, evolved on a death world. The council stiffened. Death worlds. Planets so hostile that few civilizations could survive them. Worlds where the environment, the creatures, even the very air, fought to kill anything that lived there. Your species didn't grow strong through genetic engineering or selective breeding, the scholar whispered. You became strong because your world forced you to. Morrison gave a slow, knowing smile. Now you're getting it. The hidden strength of humanity. The scholar continued, his mind racing. That explains your adaptability, your aggression, your resilience. He gestured to the other species in the room. Brackens evolved in a world where strength ruled, but they never had natural predators. Drelthar were born from stone, but they've never felt starvation. The Zelvari are fast, but they've never known the terror of being hunted by something even faster. His gaze locked onto Morrison. But humans? His voice shook. Your entire history is a struggle to survive. Morrison shrugged. Yeah. We learned pretty fast that if we weren't tough enough, we'd die. So we adapted. We evolved. We got better. The scholar swallowed hard. How much better? Morrison leaned forward. His eyes darkened. I was holding back. The room went deathly still. How much are you holding back? A Velithian admiral, her species known for their strategic brilliance, gripped the table. You mean, you're capable of even more than what we saw? Morrison tilted his head, considering his words. Then he grinned. Let's just say if we ever decided to stop holding back, you'd know it. How? Morrison leaned in. Because you'd be dead. Silence. Pure, suffocating silence. For the first time in galactic history, the rulers of the Confederation truly feared humanity. And Morrison could see it in their eyes. The warning. Finally, the Krovax intelligence officer, who had been silent this entire time, spoke. His voice was cold, calculating. What do you want, human? Morrison's smile faded. We want peace. The council members stared in disbelief. Peace? The Bracken general scoffed. You're telling me that a species as powerful as yours wants peace? Morrison's expression hardened. We do. But here's the thing. He gestured toward the window where the massive galactic fleet loomed over the Colosseum. If you ever force us into war. His voice dropped to a deadly whisper. We will end it before it even begins. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. And for the first time in their existence, the Galactic Confederation realized. They had made a terrible mistake by underestimating humanity. The moment Morrison uttered those words, we will end it before it even begins. The council felt the weight of his warning settle in their bones. But the true horror? It wasn't just those in the room who heard it. The entire Galactic Confederation heard it. Unknown to Morrison, the Colosseum's live broadcast had never been shut off. Billions of aliens across the galaxy, from the slums of war-ravaged planets to the high towers of the imperial capitals, had just witnessed what a single human could do. And now they had just heard the most terrifying revelation of all. Humans were holding back. And if they ever chose to unleash their full strength, the war wouldn't last days. It wouldn't last hours. It would be over before it started. Galaxy-wide panic. Within minutes, the Confederation's communication channels exploded into chaos. Did you hear what the human said? He took down the strongest warriors in the galaxy like they were nothing. If this is them holding back, then what are they really capable of? Entire planetary governments froze. Military strategists scrambled to recalculate their war plans. For centuries, the Confederation had ranked humans as a minor power. A species that was useful, sure, but never a real threat. Now that ranking had been shattered. And the worst part? Nobody knew exactly how powerful humans really were. All they knew was that they had never shown their full strength. And that was enough to make entire war fleets reconsider their stance on humanity. The Grand Chancellor demands an emergency meeting. On the Confederation's homeworld of Vorthuan, the Supreme War Council convened in an emergency session. The Grand Chancellor, an ancient Veldrani with shimmering silver scales, stood at the center of the chamber, her many eyes filled with unease. This is a catastrophe, she hissed. A Bracken warlord slammed his fist onto the table. It is unacceptable. If humans have been hiding their true strength, that means they've been deceiving us all along. A Zelvari fleet commander, usually confident, now looked visibly shaken. Deceiving us? Or protecting us? That single question froze the room. Because it forced them to consider something. Something far more terrifying than war. What if humanity had kept their strength hidden not as a threat, but as a kindness? What if, instead of conquering the galaxy, they had chosen to coexist? And what if, after today, that decision changed? The hidden war records of humanity. One of the Krovax intelligence officers, a creature with long, sinewy limbs, slowly stood. His voice was low, filled with dread. I have studied humans for decades. The room turned toward him. I have combed through every record of their history. His elongated fingers tapped on a hollow table, and classified human war data filled the air. And I have come to one conclusion. The council members leaned in. The Krovax swallowed. We should be grateful that humanity desires peace. Silence. Then the records played. The first video was grainy, old, from their homeworld. It showed nuclear fire swallowing entire cities. Another showed titanic war machines rolling across the battlefield, erasing enemies in seconds. Then, the footage of the orbital cleansing campaigns, when humans, with cold precision, sterilized entire enemy fleets with weapons that made no sound, left no survivors. By the time the recordings ended, even the most stubborn of warlords looked pale. The Grand Chancellor's voice was barely a whisper. These wars, they are from before humans even reached the stars? The Krovax nodded grimly. Yes. And they were this ruthless against their own kind? Yes. The realization was devastating. If humans were capable of such destruction before they had interstellar technology, then what could they do now? The Confederation had always thought itself the superior force in the galaxy. Now it was clear. Humans had simply never needed to prove otherwise. We need to change course. Now. The Council, for the first time in its history, felt true fear. A drow, their general, growled, then what do? If we antagonize them, we risk extinction. If we grovel, we look weak. The Velithian admiral exhaled slowly. We need to change our approach. Immediately. She turned to the Grand Chancellor. If humanity wants peace, we must ensure that peace is maintained. At any cost. The room murmured in agreement. Because they all knew. A war with humans wouldn't be a war. It would be annihilation. Humanity's response. Back on the human homeworld, the UEG, United Earth Government, High Command received a strange transmission from the Confederation. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't a demand. It was an offer. An offer to strengthen diplomatic relations, to increase trade agreements, to share military strategies. Humanity's leaders glanced at each other, then at the reports of the Colosseum incident. And they laughed. Because they understood exactly what had happened. The galaxy had finally realized the truth. For years, humans had lived in the Confederation's shadow, pretending to be weaker than they were. Now the Confederation was racing to secure their favor. And humanity? They had just been handed the most powerful advantage in the universe. Not through conquest. Not through war. But through fear. Morrison, upon hearing the news, simply smirked. Took them long enough. The moment of realization had spread across the galaxy like wildfire. The most powerful alien empires, who once viewed humanity as a lesser species, now saw them as an enigma wrapped in a nightmare. The Confederation's entire military doctrine, built upon the assumption that they were the dominant force, was shattered overnight. Humanity, the species they had dismissed, underestimated, and occasionally exploited, had been holding back. And now everyone knew it. The new galactic order. Within days, political channels erupted into emergency negotiations. Treaties that had taken decades to negotiate were rewritten in hours. Once hostile factions scrambled to form alliances with Earth. The Bracken Empire, long considered the Confederation's greatest warrior race, issued a formal statement of respect to humanity, a first in their history. The Zelvari, known for their speed and agility, sent emissaries to Earth, eager to study human endurance. The Valethian strategists, once dismissive of human tactics, now requested joint military exercises. Even the secretive Krovax intelligence networks, who had once considered humanity a mild curiosity, suddenly went silent. Because now they weren't studying humans. They were fearing them. And for the first time in history, the Galactic Confederation stopped treating humanity as an equal. They started treating them as a superior force. The Confederation's final decision. On the Confederation's capital world, the Grand Chancellor held one last emergency meeting. This time there was no arrogance in the chamber. No talk of military superiority. Only a desperate need for survival. The Krovax intelligence officer, who had been silent for most of the discussions, finally spoke. His voice was calm but firm. We have one choice. The council turned to him. We must ensure that humanity remains our ally. At any cost. The Bracken warlord scowled. And if they decide to turn against us? The Krovax didn't blink. Then we will not survive. A chill passed through the room. Because no one disagreed. Humanity's response. Back on Earth, UEG High Command had received the news. The Confederation's shift in attitude was obvious. For years, humanity had been excluded from high-level military planning. Now, they were being invited into the most classified strategic councils. For years, humanity had been given the worst trade deals. Now, they were being offered economic partnerships on unprecedented levels. For years, humanity had been seen as just another species in the galactic community. Now, the galaxy was terrified of them. And humanity? They didn't even have to do anything. Morrison, sitting in a high-level briefing room, smirked. So, what do we do? A UEG admiral chuckled. Nothing. Morrison raised an eyebrow. Nothing? The admiral leaned forward. Let them sweat. Let them wonder. Let them be afraid of what we might be capable of. He smiled. Because as long as they fear us, they'll never dare cross us. Morrison laughed. Well then, I guess we finally won the game. The admiral shook his head. No, Morrison. We didn't just win. He looked out the window toward the countless alien fleets now scrambling to align with humanity. We rewrote the rules. The lesson the galaxy will never forget. And so, the galaxy changed. Not through war. Not through bloodshed. But through a single realization. Humans were never weak. They were simply being polite. And if they ever stopped holding back, there wouldn't be a second chance to regret it. Fire enjoyed this? Subscribe to The Void Narratives for more epic sci-fi stories. Rocket.